Okay, so just for the introduction of the recording, so this is the Consolidated Lodging Tax Application Workshop. My name is Amy McGuffin. I'm the CEO of Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined with Matt Anderson, Director of Tourism. If we have any questions in the chat, we will read the chat questions, and then we will leave some time for Q&A at the end of this presentation. So we will start with going over the application workshop and the details. Matt?
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I'm bouncing between multiple screens, so if you see my eyes darting around, that is why. I appreciate you being here. My goal today is basically walk through the application, literally step by step, what you're going to see as you log into the application and start completing it. Before we get to that, there are just a few things. First, as far as dates, the applications are due to be submitted by Friday, September 16th at 4 p.m. That's a change. It used to be 5 a couple years ago, but it is 4. That way nobody's scrambling there at the BOCC, making sure everything's turned in. So again, 4 o'clock on Friday, the 16th. Once the applications are graded by the municipalities and the lodging tax committees, there will be a chance for oral presentations. That will be on Friday, November 18th. Time will be announced as we get closer to that. And then as the funds are awarded, within a week of those decisions after that presentations, you'll receive notification of what your award is. And then lastly, any reports that need to be submitted for reimbursement should happen 60 days after the completion of your event. So just what might be different this year as opposed to years prior. Each year, the committee that's going to be reviewing your application is going to be different. There are going to be different members of municipalities hearing your presentation. So you need to be aware that each time, even if you've done this in the past, you're potentially listening to or speaking to a different audience. We still have the video workshop, which you're attending now. So thank you. That's one thing you can check off your list. Those that are joining us after the fact, the person watching this also needs to be the one submitting the application. And that's an important note for you all to remember. I'll say that again. The person submitting the application needs to be the one that has watched this video. That's worth repeating multiple times. You'll probably hear me say it once again. So the biggest thing with the lodging tax is it's money intended to be used to help projects, events get off the ground, function that support tourism in the area. The programs could be something to do with some sort of large tourism marketing for your agency. It could be promoting an event. It could be the construction of the event from the ground up. I got your note there, Amy. I see it. We can also support the operations of capital expenditures. That said, this process, I'll repeat that. This process is not for capital expenditures. This is only for events and special projects. So there'll be another process at a later date that will be used for capital projects. Lodging tax can also be used, and this doesn't really fall into this particular group, but it's good information to have, the operation of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by nonprofit organizations. Those typically are going to be owned by municipalities. In some circumstances, we'll be able to award it, but largely what we're seeing for this grant application is for your special events and projects.
If I might step in a little bit, Matt. So in the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about capital purchases. And so some of your events, you may have some things that you can use over and over. If you have those type of items, they may or may not be funded. It all depends on the committee and if they allow it to be in. So if you're looking at particular reusable items for your event, please make sure that's clear in your application of why you're requesting those funds within your budget. So those are for items. I'll give a good example. Let's just say you have a banner that is a branded banner. Obviously, you're going to have multiple year use. And a lot of times they define capital purchases as if it has multiple years of life. So we just want to make sure that if you're using those type of products, that you're very clear in your application of those products and what they are. So they would be potentially some capital purchases by definement, but not necessarily a capital expense like a billboard sign. That would be a little bit of a difference. So a banner is something that you use on an operation of your event that could potentially be multiple years, whereas a capital expense of a billboard sign that is permanent would not be allowed. So just clarification in regards to the capital purchases.
So on the screen that you're looking at now are just a variety of examples, and I've broken it out into essentially 3 different categories. For those that don't know, I used to sit on the lodging tax committee for the city for a number of years and have heard countless applications and have been at the Consolidated presentations. And in my experience, the most likely things to be funded are there on the left under the commonly funded. So marketing, communication, advertising, going outside of 50 miles seems to be the easiest thing to get funded. Now, I'm not offering any sort of guarantee by any means, but that's probably the most commonly expense that will be reimbursed. Other items that are funded fairly regularly could be rental fees for facilities that you're going to be at, your venues and whatnot. Various equipment, whether you're using a sound system, stage lighting, radios, that sort of thing. And then even your entertainment and speakers, those can be reimbursed as well. Somewhere in the middle that sometimes is, depending on where the committee sees it going, can also be funded, could be some sort of employee training, computer maintenance expense, and that can be for ticketing software, tracking system, that sort of thing. Office supplies, IT support, that can be along the lines of web development, social marketing, that sort of thing, volunteer training, as well as transport. The things that are not allowed are over on the right. So we're talking about prizes for contestants, various resale items, food and drink, beautification, fundraising, payroll of any sort, insurance, various permit costs. Those will not be reimbursed by the committee. Just to get us on the same page as far as the different, when you see through the application, the different terms that are coming up. Tourism is any economic activity resulting from tourists, which may include overnight stays, meals, tours, gifts, and souvenirs. It does not mean they have to stay overnight all the time. Certainly an event where people are coming over for the day has merit. I'm also thinking of various marketing programs for instance, art galleries or museums where they're simply getting the word out to get people that are in town over to them is also tourism. Amy, can you grab for a second?
Yep. And so tourism promotion is those activities, operations, and expenditures designed to increase tourism. So like Matt was saying, you do have the opportunity to advertise and publicize, but it's not limited to that. It's distributing information on the purpose of attracting and welcoming tourists. Operations of tourism promotion agencies is a avenue of tourism promotion to which then you can ask for reimbursement for those costs, which it may be a third party that does the tourism promotion for you. So that would be the promotion agencies. And then funding, marketing, or operations of special events and festivals designated to attract tourists, which is the main function of this application process. Keep going. Tourism
back.
related.
I apologize, guys. I'm on the tail end of COVID, so every now and then I go into a coughing fit, but I'm back now.
Okay.
Go ahead if you could advance the slide. Which way did you get all the way through this one?
Not yet. So then the tourism related facility, obviously, this is the real or tangible personal property with usable life of 3 or more years, or constructed with volunteer labor that is owned by a public entity, owned by a nonprofit, used to support tourism, performing arts, or to accommodate tourist activities. And then the operation of tourism related facilities, all tourism activities and services undertaken by applicant for the purpose of the project or event, including services for the operation, management of the facility, leisure facility and activities, food and drink facilities and services, trading, access to cultural, historic, and natural sites, etc. So you may be asking, well, why are we going over these definitions? The reason we go over these definitions is because it is listed specifically in the RCW of which these funds are made available. I would like to just highlight that this application really is functioning on the first 2 definitions. The other 2 definitions is when we get into the capital applications, which is usually only eligible for municipalities to apply for. So just if you are joining us after this presentation, the top 2 definitions are the most appropriate definitions for this application process.
Thank you, Amy. So now just a few quick notes on just the tech side, the back end of this. The biggest takeaway that I'll offer you for this is to go ahead and create your account early. I would suggest after this, if you don't already have an account with the county, do go to their website, follow the links to get to the lodging tax application. It's under the Department of Board of County Commissioners, and you can kind of track it down from there and get yourself set up with a login for the county website. It's very easy to do. And then from that, you'll be able to access the application. That said, I would go one step further, and instead of sitting down and completing the application right there and then, what you should do is go ahead and complete the questions on a Word document or Google Docs, have that ready and off to the side, and then you can just cut and paste it into the form. It tends to work a little easier that way, and that way, if for some reason there is a glitch as the items are getting inputted into that form and you lose it, you still have your backup because you created it on a Google Doc or a Word document. You can also download all the questions. There is a link to download essentially a worksheet that will have the questions that we'll be going through. So you'll have a written document of all of everything that you need to focus on. So download the written worksheet, create the login, and start answering them on a separate document. Okay, we are in the workshop right now, and that is actually as soon as you log into the application, the very first thing it asks is if you've done this workshop. So it's a simple yes or no button on the actual application. Once again, the person submitting the application has to be the one who has done the workshop. There's a verification process as well. So after this, one thing you can do is email Emily, and the address is there, and we'll have it elsewhere, that who you are, you've gone through the workshop in the past, and I guess I'll assume that how they'll do it this time as well is they'll keep a spreadsheet of the people who have responded and then match it up to the applications that come in. So there'll be that verification of who watched the workshop and who submitted the application.
As I go into the next slide, is there any questions? I can't see it with my screen share, so you're going to probably have to manage that.
Let me get in there. Nope, nothing in chat.
Okay. So I'll just start over with the application. With the intro, it's pretty basic information. We recommend that you have this information completely filled out as much as possible. You would need to upload your W-9 for your business, or an IRS designation letter for your nonprofit. If you're not familiar with that, the application does give you an example of what your letter should look like. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to call the Chamber of Commerce and we can help you with an example of ours so you can get the correct one in regards to that. Under the service category, you want to make sure that you let them know what your category of interest is for your application. The start date, the end date, specifically for your events. If it's a year-round process, as if you're trying to do a year-round program, you would want to put January 1st to December 31st to just designate that it's a full year. The location is where your venue sits. So you'd want to make sure that wherever you're holding your event, it would be your venue location. So if you're in downtown Ellensburg, you can put downtown Ellensburg. It's not specific to a drop down where it's only a choice. You can type it in so we can see where your location of your event is. Requested funds, this should be automatically populated, but if you do have a budget, you could verify that population after you fill out the budget portion. Listed use of intended funds, this is translated into the contract, so keep it broad, but make sure you cover everything. So if you noticed in the previous slides, we stated don't use the general fund definition of operations. These are things that, even though we say keep it broad, you do want to kind of break it down so that the committee, the reviewers do know what you're going after and where they don't have to make assumptions. It does take a longer process in your oral reports, and it also does affect your scoring if they can't read between the lines. So just make sure that when you're doing this application, you're staying broad, but yet you're making sure that everything that you're wanting listed on that contract is spelt out. There is a tourism season. You do have qualifying points when it comes to this application. Based on the tourism season, they give you a point difference. So just make sure that you know where you're falling into that tourism season, and also know the answer to why would tourists travel to Kittitas County to attend your event or your activity. So just make sure that you have that information and that it's really spelt out for the reviewers.
Like last year, there is the video component as well. Now, this is a time to be personable and relatable about your project and/or event. If it is a historical event, make sure you show past photos and videos. If it's a new event, don't let that hang you up. Show what the show what the event could look like. Whether it's like events that have been held elsewhere, that's okay. What you really want to do is just create a sense so the committee has a better idea of what it is that you're trying to create. Likewise, if it's a new project that doesn't exist and you don't necessarily have materials you feel like you can share, again, I would say find something similar that's going to shed light on what it is that you're trying to get across. It's going to be far more effective to have something rather than just saying it or having it written in the black and white. That's what this video is for, is to really breathe life into the project. Those videos should be 4 to 7 minutes long. There will be a spot on the application that you will provide a link. You will not be able to download, or I should say upload the video to the county per se. It will need to be hosted somewhere else. Most commonly YouTube seems to be the go-to, but Google Drive and there's some other video outlets that'll work. And then you'll just include that link so that the graders can access your video. Keep it 4 to 7. And again, the biggest thing I'd say is be personal to it.
And just an added comment, 4 to 7 minutes is a long time, and we understand that. So, just take some time before you create that video and just think of what would be the best way to answer any questions that the panel may have, and that it would give clarity to the understanding of your project. So Matt's given you a lot of good pointers to where if you have existing footage, leave a minute to where you can get on there and speak on behalf of it, because 4 minutes is a very long time for a video.
Okay, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty a bit more on the application. The first question, part one, is providing a description of your project or event. So the first thing you'll need to decide is if you're a project and your event. That's usually pretty self-evident. If your event, you're happening over a day or a couple of days, whereas a project is going to span a much larger time. So this is where you're going to have a short narrative. You've got 2,500 characters to introduce to the committee what you're hoping to achieve with your project or event. This was an example for a museum that may be using to create a marketing program, how they the intended plan for the program to increase tourism, membership, historical awareness. The intention to execute this plan through social media and marketing, Facebook, print media. Talk about your target audiences in this example. Really get into the broad overview of what this project, this would be for a project, what it would entail. Likewise, for an event, you're going to essentially do the same thing. You're going to, what I would suggest is start from when the event opens, what's going to happen that day, what's the entertainment that's going to be there, why, how are you going to attract the tourists that will be coming, what are the other things besides entertainment that will be there? Will it be food trucks? Will it be a market? Will there be promotions throughout town to help support your event? It's a broad overview, again, of what is happening on during your event. From this is where you'll then get into that list of intended funds. So in the example of the 4th of July event, we'll need funds for stage, we'll need funds for 3 acts, we'll need funds for a bouncy house, we'll need funds for portalettes. Those are all reimbursable expenses that potentially could be awarded dollars for. Likewise, if it was going back to that project example, and I'm just pulling this out, if it was a marketing campaign for that museum, let's say they had a brand new dinosaur exhibit coming in and they wanted to create a web page and a Facebook media, and they were going to do some video. Those would all be different things that would qualify for lodging tax dollars. They just need to articulate how they will use those funds and how they will reach outside of 50 miles to attract tourists into the area. Amy, do you have anything you want to add to those 2 examples?
No, I think that's good.
All right, let me get back into my application. So then question 2, we get into just how, I got to bebop around screen, stay with me guys. Why would tourists travel to Kittitas County to attend your event? Again, we're going to talk about what it is that you have to offer. And here you may need to drill down even farther than that broad overview. If it's an event, and you know it's starting, let's say at noon, and you're going till 7 or 8, I would point out that, well, since it's going till 7 or 8 and we have drinks, guests are far more likely to stay overnight. Sometimes you really just kind of have to lead the committee down the road on why it could create an overnight stay. What are the other offerings? What stands out about your event? Is this something that's been done elsewhere? Has it been done in town already? And are we doing the same thing? I think what I've noticed in the past is the committee has appreciated creativity. They do like seeing the new event come in, and they're willing to take risk on it, as long as it's well thought out. When you have, we get a little off, but when you get your application in and you've got your next great event, whatever the case may be, make sure you have a couple of those at least early steps ironed out, like a date, where you want to have it, and you've at least pitched it to the venue that, hey, how's the comedy nights sound at the Brick? Does that sound like something you guys want to do? So you're not coming into the process with just the idea and not having done any of the legwork. I've seen that done in the past on applications, and those are the ones that tend to score lower. So I get you may not have every single act booked. Paint that broad picture, illustrate what you do have, whether it's a venue, whether it's a date, whether it's already have one act and you're hoping to get 3 more, but show your work is what I want to say. Give me 1 second. So I think I skipped ahead a little bit. So I just did a description on an event. Are you on that one? Yeah, thank you, Amy. So this was just a Renaissance fair. The Tournament of Kings Renaissance Fair will feature a one-of-a-kind experience for our guests. The event will run from 1 to 7. Plenty of things to do that are hard to find anywhere in the States. On hand, we'll have a stage with multiple entertainment for our live entertainment, and they have a list there. And then also we plan on 2 more acts, each performing 90 minutes. And then the grand finale is a jousting company. And there'll be a dinner served. Now, obviously, when you do your application, you're gonna go into as much detail as you have. You have 2,500 characters to expand on, but that's just an example that will help paint that picture of what that event could look like. I will also say, if in this example, let's say that Kittitas County never has had a Renaissance fair and this is a new event, go find a video, some clips of what other Renaissance fairs look like, and mesh that into that 4 to 7 minute video that you need to present. That's going to help, 1, illustrate what the event's going to look like, and 2, kind of fill up that 4 to 7 minutes as well.
I'll grab this one for you, Matt.
Okay.
So the description of the facility. This is a really good opportunity for you to determine on your event why you chose the facility and you chose the location. We found that in the previous years, a reviewer from Roslyn may not understand or know your location very well. So this really puts them into a perspective of why you chose your event to be into Ellensburg, or why you chose a Cle Elum event if you're an event coordinator that's in Cle Elum, Roslyn, or even up into the Snoqualmie Pass. So this really helps them if they have not experienced your event. This is a way that you can bring them into that location and why you choose to do those particular venues and facility. This also helps. We use the gallery as an example, and so this also helps with the year-round projects of why it's important to support some of these year-round projects, because the facility is already there. It has a unique collection, and it provides items for tourists, which if you remember in the definition, that we want to make sure that it's not just the heads and beds, it's also for the residual activities that may motivate people to stay the night. So just be a little bit more descriptive on your facility and what your facility offers and why you choose that location.
So the next one that they have here, response 2.2, describe the prior success of your event, activity, facility, and attraction of tourists. It's a bit double-edged. If you're reoccurring, then you should have, hopefully, documentation of where your guests are coming from, how they enjoyed their stay. If it was, a year-long program, how far was your reach? If it was an event, how many tickets did you sell? Where did they come from? That sort of thing. It should be fairly easy to illustrate the success of whatever it is. If it's a new one, this obviously becomes a bit trickier. That said, I don't believe that, and Amy, you might want to jump in. I don't believe the right answer is to simply say, I don't know, this is the first event, we have nothing to go off of. When I was on the committee, I didn't like that response. What I would have rather seen is, you know what, there's an event over in Tuscaloosa. They do this event that's very similar to what we are. They're targeting the same audience. And it looks like last year they had 200 people stay the night. As much as we are all creative people, I would be hard pressed to think that we're going to come up with the one activity that nobody else is, and there's no historical information. So get out there, do a little homework. Don't just say it's a new activity and I've got nothing to base that off. Amy, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that's a good advice for people. And if you are concerned about your event and you want to kind of bounce that off with anybody, again, like I've done in previous years, I am available. You can make appointments with me. I'm happy to brainstorm with your application and the things that you're doing. I just ask that you give me the week of the application due date to work on our own. And so this just is your opportunity. I know how difficult it is to try to guess how you're going to be presented to a committee, and then you just may not know what to put in there. So I'm happy to help those that are needing the extra assistance. Even if you're not a new event, maybe you've done this and you kind of want to change things up, I'd be happy to meet with you. At this time, Matt, I'm going to ask if there's any questions. Is there any chats?
I don't see anything. Feel free to type one in now if somebody wants to. Nope, not seeing anything.
Okay, we'll move forward then.
Okay. Okay, the next one is describing how you will promote your events and or facility to attract tourists. So this is your promotion plan. This is your marketing plan. This, I would think, should be hopefully the easiest question to answer. It's the one that's a lot of the tools already out there as far as social media, web pages, various ads that can be ran on different. If it's a car show, for instance, I'm just throwing that out there. You've decided to advertise in these 3 key car show magazines and these 3 car show websites. So that's where you really will be able to describe how you will promote your activity. Excuse me. It can also be non-traditional. I should say non-traditional anymore. It's becoming more and more, but using Spotify, some of those ones that, you know, people haven't historically used a lot in Kittitas County in the past for different events, but I think they're going to start to be a bit more prevalent. Using Spotify or, you know, before podcasts, sponsored bits. Those cost a little bit more, but they also have a larger reach. Also, not only will you tell how you are doing it, you're going to want to illustrate who you are doing it to. So in the case of the Gen X Con, you know, when you make your Facebook ad campaign or media campaign, you can be very specific as far as who you want this particular ad to show up in front of. So those details just add credibility to your event and add credibility to your application. So make sure you put them in there. I've never seen them as tedious as I was reviewing applications.
This portion I really like talking about is the collaboration. A lot of times your organization collaborates and has some creative partnerships with other organizations or groups. And so really use this as a strength in your application. You know, that the adage says that, you know, we can kind of just lift each other up. And so this is where your collaboration should come from, is find that partner or the multiple partners that you can help assist attracting visitors, maybe not just to your event, but maybe to your partner's event also, so that you can cross promote. So include if they're financial partners or if they're planning partners, or you're sharing marketing opportunities and dollars, cross promotion. This really should be a strength within your application. We are a great community that likes to support one another, especially in the creative industry. So find that way that you can help each other and collaborate. This should be a strength point in your application. Additionally, in your collaboration, when we get into promoting local business, describe how you promote the lodging establishments, the restaurants, or any business in Kittitas County. We've seen some interesting partnerships that really bring some dividends to the applicants. So if you find that you want to include this local business, then list that as a collaboration partner. This can also include your sponsor recognitions, linking out to the various businesses on your online platform. So you could have on your website of your event, you could have visit Ellensburg if your location is in Ellensburg, visit Cle Elum, and you could list some of those partners, or you can even backlink the websites, the tourism websites, because they usually have the list of the local businesses, so then you don't have to do all of the work. Strategic partnerships with these local businesses have become fruitful, so just make sure that you do this to make both businesses successful in regards to that. Specific details, you can have some promotions, especially with a host hotel or maybe with your venues. We really see this collaboration when you do specific promotions, really with your hotel partners. We've also seen it with restaurants before. So, you know, as an example, there could be an event that says, hey, on the back of this ticket, you can turn this in for $10 off at a local business, or maybe you can get a free drink at a restaurant. So be creative when you have these opportunities in these collaborations. You do have the ability in your application to show proof of these collaborations. It is restricted by how many pages you can upload for those things, so be very intentional on what you're going to be sharing. Back in the day when we did this application, there was a lot of what I call fluff, like 20 pages of fluff. Just make sure that you're very intentional on this upload, because I believe it's restricted to 3 pages. So just be very specific.
On that collaboration, and in particular, this will lead into tracking a little bit and whatnot too. Amy had mentioned using host hotel and or other hotels. Having been a hotelier, I will say this: do not rely on the hotel to do the tracking for you. It can be tough, in particular on weekends when most of these events are happening, to get into too long of a conversation on what brings you here, yada, 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 yada. The hotel has their best interest, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a staff employee at 10 o'clock at night, and he's got people deep waiting to check in. It's going to be hard to get those good numbers. That said, that's not just key to abandon the process. What I would suggest is, if you can swing it with a hotel, so it's going to need some cooperation, is if your project has a swag bag, a handout or something, as a hotel manager, I was fine giving out those bags. Oh, you're with the Gen X Con. Oh, here's your bag. And then make that, you know, maybe have a sign, maybe you have something there so where the guest can identify, oh, I'm with Gen X Con. And then the hotel person's not having to drag it out. It's just a little easier. And then, you know, if you dropped off 50 bags for Gen X Con at the Holiday Inn Express and you picked up 25, well, you did your count as how many hotel stays were there. And it was really pretty seamless. So the hotels are busy. They can help. Each one's going to be a little different. They'll have their own different restrictions and whatnot. But the one takeaway, I don't rely them solely to be like, oh, how many people from my event stayed at your hotel on that day, because you'll be disappointed. But try.
I would recommend trying. The other thing too in here is I would recommend a survey platform. I think we'll get to that a little bit later, but the use of QR codes are coming back as a trend. And so this could be something that you just ask them to have it located somewhere. Maybe you have a survey, they can enter to win, but have a fun time with the specific promotions that you have with these businesses.
Okay. Are we on future plans? Yes. So one of the goals for the committee is that they want to make sure that as these events are coming forward, that they're not needing to come forward every year with hands out looking for funding. So you want to do what you can to think ahead as far as, well, how can I grow this event, and what will make it self-sustaining? And what will my event look like potentially in 2 or 3 years? So think of how you can offset those costs, whether it's ticket sales, merchandise sales. Obviously, sponsorships are going to be a key part of it. Any sort of trade, parking fees, other grants that are out there, those are all viable options. And the committee is going to want to hear some sort of cost recovery option that makes sense. Now, if this is a single project, you may not have a real good answer for this. If it's a one and done, and you don't really have any future plans going forward, because once the project's done, it's done. I guess for this, again, I'm not big on just leaving questions blank. Just reinforce why this is. It's another chance to reinforce why this one-year project is here, and you won't need additional funding. Maybe flip the question a little bit, that you're not going to be back here looking for funding, and just state why the project is important. It's just one more chance to reinforce your position. Okay, and then getting to the tail end here, people. So part 4 is kind of the catch-all. Please provide any additional information that will help illustrate what your project will look like. So again, screenshots, testimonials, past facts, brochures, posters that you have done already, analytics from prior events. Don't bog it down. Don't put useless stuff in there just for the sake of having something to upload, making sure it's meaningful. But this really is just kind of the chance where you can add anything that you feel like hasn't been caught yet in one of the questions already asked. Okay. Now we get into, excuse me, I'm bouncing around my screens again. The next couple of questions are more numeric. It's not so much filling in stuff. It's wanting to know, have you received grant funding in the past? If so, how many years have you received grant funding? After the 4th year, you're only eligible for 10% of your operating budget. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. If this is a reoccurring event in its 4th year, you're only going to be able to get 10% of your operating budget. Further into this area is where it's going to get very specific, and this is where your tracking is going to become even that more important. It gets into attendance. It gets into a number of different things. Overall attendance. It's going to look at what you thought you were going to have and what you actually had. So write those numbers down now for this year, and then verify it at the conclusion of your event. Hopefully you have something similar for that from prior years. And then it goes down even farther. How many of those people traveled more than 50 miles to your event? How many people were from the outside of the Washington state? How many people stayed overnight? The committee knows it's hard to get these numbers. But as I've said before, you can't just throw up your arms and not try and get them. And there are tools out there that can help you. Ticket sales, obviously, is probably going to be the easiest one. If your event is a free event, or if it's still tricky, but if it has some sort of registration in it, that would still afford the opportunity to input a zip code. If you had surveys, you had people, we just had Cruise in Kittitas, and we have some drone footage. Now, it's not going to tell me how many people were from where, but at least I'll have a pretty good idea how many people were on the street looking at the burnouts as they were going by. It's not always perfect, but we need to make an attempt to get the numbers in there. If you do have a solid connection with the hotel, find out how many people booked under the Gen X Con. Oh, great. 20, perfect, and then include it in there. If it's a new event, again, you need to make some educated guesses on what your events should be able to attract. That could just be a phone call to the Gen X convention that was happening in, Tuscaloosa. How many people came to yours on the first year? At least it's a baseline. At least it's something, and not just not having anything there tangible to provide. I think there's opportunity that we'll be able to get more refined numbers using technology. We're not quite there yet, so you're still going to have to do a lot of the legwork to show how you are getting your attendance numbers. Amy, you want to chime in?
Yeah, just make sure we don't have any chat questions. I'm going to go over the next few slides, just because we are about 10 minutes to the hour, so we like to keep this under an hour. So under the budget section, you're going to have some potential changes. What changes will be made if funding for your request is not available or recommended? So you need to evaluate your event. If it's an existing event, you need to kind of see. You'll know what you can and can't go after for reimbursement. So you may want to look at what will happen if the funding of your request is not available or recommended anymore. So make sure that you're able to quantify that and put that down in your application. The budget looks the same as the years past. Just fill in the spaces that pertain to the project and event for what you're requesting the funds for, including the matching funds and any other fund sources. That includes your sponsors. The budget must include revenues, expenditures, and a potential profit or loss. And so it's already pre-filled in there into the application. You just need to fill in your pieces of that information. For projects and events that are new, this again is just an estimation of what your budget's going to be. Go back to the slide earlier of the eligible funding and really make sure that you've done your due diligence on that budget section of those that are commonly funded. Those are things that you can definitely put a little bit more effort to. So obviously, if you're renting a facility, that's a specific flat fee that you're going to already know. But when it comes to marketing and advertising, that's where your marketing plan is going to be very important, and what type of platforms you're going to be using, whether it's digital or traditional. So just make sure that you put in all the anticipated revenues, expenditures, and then definitely make sure you have a profit or loss listed. For projects and events that are ongoing for more than a year, you please also submit those actuals from the previous 3 years of the operation. So you will have to do a little bit more on the budget section, but you should already have that information. So that should just be a plug and go type of situation in regards to that.
Amy, there was a question in chat. Whoops, just look it up there. What is the percentage? What is the match for this funding? So there's not a set match. It's one of the questions on there that you'll be graded on is how much you're bringing to the table as well. So the more you're able to bring to the table, the higher the score you'll receive. It's a 20-point max question. So for instance, if your ask was for $5,000 and you already have $5,000 secured either in the bank or another sponsor or whatnot, so you've got 100% already. So you would get max points for that category.
I love that, Matt. As an example, I would caution you that if you have enough money to cover your expenses, you're going to cause some other questions of the reviewers. So just make sure that when you're putting in that was just a scenario. But most likely you will have some type of match that will come in, whether it's volunteer hours, whether it's sponsorships or anything like that. So just be cautious when you're filling out this budget, because you may open some other questions if you're already fully funded and you're requesting funds. So I see there's another question in the chat, I believe.
Yeah, if we had a version of our event in the past, but not since 2019, 2020, would be considered a new event or an ongoing event?
It would be considered an ongoing event, but I would recommend that in your project description, you specifically say that you have not been in operation those years so that they can make sure that they use that as a decision factor in how they score your application.
Yeah, and that might be in that area where other information that you'd like to add, I think would be a good spot for that. And that looks like it for what's in chat.
Okay, so I'll keep going because this is the fun stuff, right? So branding, on your website, you must include the county's or an appropriate city tourism website logo. We've added an example of the tourism logos that will come to the next screen, but there are some city logos that are listed in there because they may not have a particular tourism website. So we just want to make sure that you're giving credit where credit is due. So some of the cities within our county may not have a tourism website, but they do have a city logo. So we would recommend that you use the appropriate city logo if they do not have a tourism website logo. So we'll show you that example. Print and online ads, make sure that you are at least sending a call to action to a website logo. So your URL with a one-click away hyperlink, the logo must be within that first page. So if you're sending it to your general page or your ticketing page, either way of those pages, you better have those logos on those pages. So if you're using an online ad and you're saying, hey, buy your tickets now, and you're sending them to your ticket page of your website, make sure that you have the appropriate logos on that page. I would recommend putting it in a footer or a header. So any page in your website that has the footer or the header, you have the same logo on all pages. That's just the easiest way to do it. So just have it reoccurring on any page on your website. Video ads, make sure that when you come to the end of the video that you give some, pay some homage of your funding. And so this is the great place to put, again, the county's appropriate logo and the city appropriate logo. The county's logo is the Central Washington Outdoor logo. There's two options that you can provide. So whatever works better in your media. So just make sure you're using those. And then we do have the two logos for Cle Elum and My Ellensburg. And then you have the city of Kittitas and the city of Roslyn. We just recommend that you include those cities that may not have designated tourism sites. Just put that logo on there. You will have access to these logos after this workshop. So if you cannot find them, feel free to call the chamber, or you can email me or Matt, and we'll get you those logos based on where your event is being held. I'm going to keep going, Matt. Is that all right?
Yep.
So we've really talked a lot about quantifying your success. Matt went over several examples during this time of this workshop. So just make sure that you do your due diligence. We have had events come in at the oral presentations, and they did not have any reasonable way of measuring their successes. So we're just saying, be familiar what's going to be best for your event, and make sure that you can be tracking those type of things that you're wanting to track. It gets harder when you have free events. But you can see in those tracking bullet points that you can use Google Analytics, you can use some online ads, you can even drive the measurabilities by doing a contest or some entries. So don't say you can't track it. It just may be different for your event from somebody else's event. Surveying is another way that you can engage. This is an example of what we use for the city of Kittitas at the burnouts on the back of our People's Choice poll.
That's Mount Dale, actually.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we did something similar to that, yeah, on cruising. And so we asked them questions to which then we can determine some measurabilities. And so the front area of the People's Choice Award is on the front, and then there's some examples on the back that you can do in regards to that. This is our way of taking that survey information and putting it into an infographic that's easily legible for those that are reviewing or seeing how we're tracking those quantitative successes. Reporting, notes from the auditor. So this is a little bit after the fact, right? So you just have to remember that in order for you to actually get the check from this process of reimbursement, you will need to update your W-9 form, which you do have the ability to upload that with your IRS letter in the application. But this is also another reason why they need your W-9, is because the auditor cannot reimburse you of any of these funds until they have a W-9 on file. You are required to pay the vendor in full before submitting the reimbursement. The other thing to add to that is the invoice does have to have your organization listed. It cannot be a volunteer of yours that gets an invoice, you pay that invoice, and then you go for reimbursement. Always remember that if you have somebody going and purchasing something for you and it's invoiced, make sure that the invoice is made out to your event. Otherwise, it's a little bit harder for DORA to reimburse those funds. This cover letter that you see off to the right is what needs to go on top of all of your reimbursement requests. You also have to complete the auditor training. That link will be on this, will be provided. It's also on the website, so you can go to the auditor training. That is required also for payment. So make sure that you're reading, or that you're reading over that PDF, and that you follow the instructions at the end of the training. It's just similar to the workshop notification. You do have to send an email to the auditor's office saying that you have gone over the auditor's training in order to be reimbursed. Lastly, make sure you read your contracts carefully, especially in section 2. This is those intended fund sections. So if you remember correctly, we kind of went over what is usually commonly funded. And then there's a section where you can go into description on what you're intending the use of the funds on. They will, if you bullet these out, it'll be cut and paste right into your contract. So just be very careful with what you have in that section, and then always read it over in your contract. Check invoices again to make sure that they match the reimbursement request. We find sometimes that the auditor's office is very good at checking the decimal points within your invoices. So if you are getting a third-party person that is charging you, I don't know, $2.50, and then you provide some backup and DORA finds that it's $2.48, yes, she will make the difference of the invoice because she's that thorough. So just make sure that you are checking your invoices to the requested reimbursement amount. I went through that pretty quickly because we are right at the top of the hour, and I did want to be cognizant of your guys' time. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to just give you a few more minutes to see those email addresses, but don't forget that the person who watched the workshop needs to be the one that's completing the application. If they're not available to be here today, they should be able to watch the recording, and then that will be appropriate if they are the one that completes the application. I'm going to stop share here, and we'll go over some open Q&A if needed. And if you want to turn on all of your cameras again, you can. Any questions out there?
Nothing coming through.
Oh, Kathy unmuted.
Yeah, I have a question actually.
Okay.
So or museum, and we've typically, requested funding just for our general marketing funds. If we were to request funds for a specific event or new program, would that have to be 2 applications, or could we do that in 1 application?
So if one is definitely an event and one is project based, I would do 2 separate ones.
Keep it as clear as you can, Kathy, because these are just colleagues that are reviewing it. So if you can keep it fairly clear, it'd be the best for you as an applicant.
That way one's not dependent on the other as far as like when they evaluate that score. Like if there was, and I'm sure you're going to turn in great applications, but if there was something that didn't quite make sense and ended up with a lower score, but they really like the event side, that you wouldn't want it to impact from the event.
Great question.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I will say this, having been on the committee for a long time, I know for many applications, it gets down to the actual room nights, and that always is the hard one, and I get it. We talked about that a little bit already, but don't overinflate your numbers. I'm sure you're all going to have successful, great events, but a new event isn't going to generate 2,000 room nights its first year. So be real with yourself, be real with your application, and put some thought into what that number, what a good first year number is, because the committee's full of people who are, a lot of them are hoteliers, so they kind of know the business, and some of them have been on that committee for a long time and seen a lot of different applications, and they're starting to pick up a sixth sense, I guess, as far as, well, does this make sense? Will this event really attract X amount of guests? So don't feel like you need to overinflate that number just to get a higher score on your application. There are plenty other areas of your application where you can really make your event or project shine and not have to overinflate.
We've hit you hard with a lot of information. This workshop is a lot to take in. One of the things that I've learned in my 10 years of being involved in this is remember who you're presenting to. There are 2 representatives, possibly 3 in some communities, that will be there reviewing these. And the Roslyn Committee and the Cle Elum Committee and the Ellensburg Committee will look at applications that are within their communities a little bit more favorable. And so remember that when you're describing your application, look at how you can collaborate to bring everybody as a county-wide system. I'm not saying that they will put zeros. We've gone over that in several years, and so I'm confident that we won't get zeros on any of the points, but you will see a difference in awardment of points. And so make sure that if you're a Cle Elum or a Roslyn event, try to tie in Ellensburg, try to tie in the county as a whole, so that they understand that you're looking at this from a county success. So just remember that. And just know that your higher point values are going to be in the heads and beds section. It's going to be in the matching funds section, the tourism season section, and I'm going to say the amount of time that this project or event brings in the tourists. So just be aware of that, so that you can calculate your successes before you write the application.
And that matrix is on the county's website.
Yes. Yep. And that's the trick 101 to grant writing. Look at how you're going to be scored. And then those are the sections that you want to really make sure that you're telling your story so that you can be successful in that grant. All right, we've gone 10 minutes over. It looks like we've hit all the points. No other questions. I will just again offer my time if you need anybody to come back and look at your applications. I will not write anything on your applications. I'll just review it and give you some pointers. I am specifically up in the Upper County area on Wednesdays, usually from 10 to 2. So you're more than welcome to schedule your time and I'm in person. Otherwise, send me an email and I can make sure that my schedule is available. Thank you so much for attending. Here we go, right?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.